He's part of a four-man Jamaican crew that made history at the Winter Olympics in Calgary, Canada, in the bobsleigh. Now, if that story sounds familiar, it's the plot of a movie, Cool Runnings. Since then, he's earned a PhD, he's worked for big corporate companies, formed his own company, been a husband and a father. What does it take to do so much, and what lessons has he learned? My guest is Dr. Chris Stokes. I'm Archibald Gordon. This is Profile. Chris Stokes, welcome to Profile.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Archie.
So you wear many hats. A father, you're a husband, you have worked in the financial services, you're an Olympian,
Yes.
you're a businessman, an
Yes.
entrepreneur on your own, you've
Yes.
worked for different companies, and
Yes.
now you're working for a company called NCS Enterprises,
Yes.
which is your own company
Yes.
that really brings together a series of different things that you've
Yes.
done over the course of your life.
Yes.
How do sports administration, thought leadership, and finances fit together?
Well, they don't abstractly, but they do for myself, because one of the personal transformational exercises I went through at the end of my corporate career at NCB was to try to define who Chris Stokes was. You know, who are you? You know, are you the suit? Are you the car in the assigned parking lot? Are you the executive that, you know, someone brings lunch to? Is that you? Are you the Olympian? And the answer is none of these things. I'm something else that I've always been and would always be, having these experiences. So stepping back to look at having come to terms with my individualhood, my personhood, my differentness, my uniqueness, I then asked the question, well, what are you interested in? What are you passionate about? And I developed what I call a portfolio of passions. That is not a career or a thing, but the things that interest me. Finance, always been good at it. That's my work experience. And we can talk about this. I see a role for it beyond profit making to life enriching. That's the first thing. Knowledge based. I have an inquisitive mind. I have studied extensively. I read extensively. I write extensively. I have an ability to communicate ideas, motivation, inspiration, thought-provoking perspectives to people. So that's where the whole thought leadership comes into play. And then, of course, sport, which is inseparable from, as are the other two, by the way, from my life. I mean, as I would run at the basic school in Galena, it's among my earliest memories.
Because throughout your life, you've been involved in
involved.
sports.
I discovered that I could run fast, and I've made the most of it. All right. So I have had to get into sport administration. You know, you can't run anymore, you can't push a bobsled anymore, but the idea of being able to help the next guy to have this experience and to enrich his or her life is consistent with the portfolio of passion, the base of the portfolio of passion, which is to do such things that makes other people's lives better while fulfilling myself, and by the way, you know, doing well while doing good.
And
Right.
all of this is work that you've been doing, or passions that you've been exploring since the early days. You talk
Yes.
about Galena St. Mary, that's
Yes.
where you grew up.
Yes.
Mother, father, brother,
Yes. Sister.
sister
Don't get me in trouble.
as well.
Sister, yes.
And I want to talk first about your father.
Yes.
Because it seems to
Yes.
me that part of your own passion and your own life is connected to what your parents were like,
Yes.
how driven they were like.
Yes. Yes.
And that begins with your father.
That begins with my father, Reverend Dr. Dudley Stokes, a great man by my own observation and by all accounts, and by public record. A man's man. You know, I grew to be taller than he was, but he would easily walk and carry himself, bear himself, much bigger than any man I've ever known. which to me was interesting because they came from very humble beginnings, and went into the ministry for reasons that are still unclear to me.
And when you say ministry here, you're talking about religion, not government.
Ministry. As a minister of the gospel, went to Calabar Seminary to study to become a pastor in the Baptist church. All right? But what struck me about my father is that it is hard for me to find many persons who, and I'm not talking about in the dollar sign, but who has made so much of themselves coming from so little. In other words, the journey of his life. And I witnessed that based on two things that are imprinted on me. One is a clear ambition. He wanted to be somebody. He wanted to be accepted, not the barefoot black guy from Westmoreland. All right? So he educated himself. He carried himself a certain way. He dressed a certain way. He spoke a certain way. And he backed that up with a work ethic that it is, except perhaps in the case of my brother and my mother, it's hard to see in anyone in terms of how he applied himself. And, you know, there are very few times that my father sat me down and said, Chris, you know, here beginneth the lesson and here endeth the lesson, the life lesson. But you learn so much by observing and seeing and the desk that he worked at and the hours that he put in and the passion with which he preached and practiced to sing and involved himself with young people, with mentoring young people. That example created an indelible impression on me. It's almost in my DNA, you know, and I draw on it, even now without having to say, well, you know, my dad said this or my dad said that. And blessed to have him as a father.
And mother also very passionate, very well known, Blossom Amelia Nelson.
Blossom Amelia Nelson, the great Blossom Amelia Nelson. You can imagine growing up in a house with those two. The earliest sign that I saw that my mother would create problems in the country and in my life was when in the early 1970s, my father was a respected pastor, Port Maria, Emmanuel Baptist Church in Port Maria. There's a building there that carries his name. And my mother, as a pastor's wife, took it on herself to cut off her hair, because a decent pastor's wife had pressed hair on her skirt, and have his big earrings. And I don't know how my father dealt with it, but it caused, you know, much a buzz in the community. But from then I saw that she's trying to be a pastor's wife, but this woman is a lot more. And I think as she claimed and owned herself and owned her own heritage and owned her own personhood, the Blossom Amelia Nelson that Jamaica knows today emerged very powerfully and has had tremendous impact on many, many lives in very useful ways, but she's marked for her sense of humor. But she blossomed. She blossomed and bloomed and became the person that we know now, and continue every day to bless the dog on the road that look hungry, to senior executives who need a word of encouragement. And it's just a phenomenal woman, really.
And I know I want to move on from talking about the family from that perspective, at least the parents, to talking about the kind of impact that the moving around that would have resulted from the fact that your father was involved in ministry would have had on your own life. But that's where we're headed after the break. So we're going to take the break now on Profile. We're talking to Dr. Chris Stokes. Stick around. We return right after these messages.